just to close off the session that we just completed, I'm reminded of Adam Smith's maxim, and the father of capitalism. And he, I think, is very much in accord with the notions that have been brought up by the panelists, and of course the references to Peter Drucker. Smith noted that the interests of the producer should be advanced only so far as necessary to advance the interests of the producer is a means to an end, not the end in themselves. And I think that is very consistent with this notion of advancing societal well-being session. If the last session, I'll ask John North to contribute here as well, is that some believe that business schools today are torn between two paradigms: the traditional profit maximization paradigm, as well as the emergent paradigm of an economy and service to life that supports well-being and dignity for all, which the BRT statement does a great deal to reflect. John, in your view, is the statement true that business schools are torn between two paradigms? Given your background in the GRLI and working with the major accrediting business bodies around the world, I think you're in a unique position to address these questions.
Thanks for that question, Robert. Of course, it's critically important to look at business and management education's role. And in short, I would say that the statement holds, yes. However, I believe it is useful to acknowledge that business schools have, over many years and for many different reasons, found themselves at crossroads of divergent and sometimes opposing paradigms that have often drawn their legitimacy and their relevance into question. I think it's perhaps useful just to look a little bit at the history, and I know Katrine would be able to also add to this, having been a lead author of the 50+20 vision that we co-developed. 50, 60 years ago, business schools came to prominence, but were criticized for being overly vocational in their training. They were seen as a place where, experienced managers were telling anecdotes about their experience to young and eager young people who were after bigger profits in their careers. Along came the Carnegie and Ford Foundation reports in the late 50s, which signaled a new era where new doctoral programs were created at leading schools. And the objective was to create rigorous and scholarly programs that helps make the field of business administration more respectable. But as a consequence of that, management education became a very demanding and competitive arena. And today, one of the biggest cost drivers within business schools is the salary of faculty. So, in short, business schools are torn between paradigms, as you've suggested. But I believe they're waking up to a much bigger dilemma, which is the following: the systemic issues within their own mainstream discipline-based journals, the often unsustainable business models of business schools with high salaries and high tuition fees, is symptomatic of a much bigger problem. In other words, that which is taught and researched is largely premised on an outdated and industrial understanding of how the world and economics can work. Business education has helped perpetuate the myth of infinite economic growth being possible on a finite planet. And doing a 180-degree turn on that is not easy, because it draws in question nearly everything that's been taught. Fortunately, we are working with a group of activist deans that recognize this, that are paying less attention to the mainstream rankings. I know Katrine's been working on developing a positive impact rating, for instance. We also have, as you mentioned, a strong strategic partnership with the two major accreditation bodies, AACSB and EFMD, both which have embedded ethics, sustainability, and responsibility assessment criteria into their accreditation standards. And this is creating a systemic shift, I believe, in business and management education, equating quality and sustainability with each other. But I want to leave a few moments in case any of the other panelists would like to add something to that. I've got a lot more to say, but I'm conscious of time.
Katrine, do you have some observations you'd like to contribute?
I would agree with everything that John has, and anything in general that John says, but specifically with everything he just said here. Maybe a note around what our global students said in the first positive impact rating that we conducted a year ago. We asked them how their business schools, not just their faculty or their programs specifically, performed in terms of creating value for society, asking them to assess their school in a variety of dimensions. And then at the end, we asked them some open-ended questions, which were interesting. We asked them what they would like the schools to start doing, stop doing, or continue doing. And the answers with regards to what they would like them to start doing were particularly interesting. The leading answer of this across all students, which is really interesting. They also were very keen on saying, stop flying us around. Find better ways to engage us with stakeholders and to learn about the world. Fool yourselves that we need to be flying around the world so that we have a global program. So they were very critical of the school and the way the school was interpreting so far the way of educating themselves. I thought that was quite important and a good indication of how far ahead students often are of how schools, administrators, and faculty are. Two brief examples.
Well, thank you, Katrin. John, I think you, in your initial response, covered a number of aspects of the other two questions that you were considering, but please feel free to bring closure to the session.
Well, I mean, I think maybe one or two things just to add to what's already been said then is that, you know, business school may find themselves in this position where they need to reconfigure not only programs, subjects, you know, faculty contributions, but also their own business model. And what we're seeing is a move towards more transdisciplinary and issue-based or issue-centered learning, which allows, you know, those traditional subjects like finance, operations, etc., to still be taught or developed, but around specific societal or environmental issues. You know, typically involving a multiple of stakeholder perspectives, which ensures that we develop ultimately graduates and future leaders that do not think and act only in silos. And something related to that, which is perhaps more speaks perhaps more to the pedagogy or the andragogy side of things, is that we need to integrate both mindset and skills for future leaders that choose to pursue doing well by doing good. And one of the areas that we've been working on quite intensively in the GRLI is in the area of whole person learning. In other words, how do we develop and involve the entire human being in the learning such that they not only develop the rational analytical capabilities, but also the emotional, physical, spiritual sometimes abilities, and bring to bear their whole and entire when skilling themselves for future roles or entrepreneurial endeavors. So I just wanted to add those points, which is, you know, having this transdisciplinary and issue-centered approach, and also complemented by the whole person learning methodologies, which we believe offers a very different energy and opportunity for business schools.
And may I quickly ask, who are the business school deans? You're leading a dean's cohort that has involved scores of deans up to this point or from around the globe. How are they receiving or how are they reacting to this charge?
Well, I think so. You know, we need to acknowledge that, you know, many of the deans that are in their current role have grown up through academia, and increasingly there's a call for professionalization of the dean's role. We're seeing more and more deans coming also from other disciplines and from outside, from business. But I think what the deans within our community value is the opportunity to to have a group around them of peers that recognize that the ecosystem within which they operate needs to change and needs to transform, and that they cannot compete to do that. We had a lovely line in the 50+20 vision work that was done when we said, you know, instead of competing to be the best in the world, let's collaborate to be the best for the world. And what we're seeing now is deans waking up to an opportunity to position their schools and their work and the future careers of their students within the context of a community of responsible action, where faculty, students, and programs are geared towards catalyzing globally responsible leadership and practice. So I think it's these peer-based and more collaborative approaches that are gaining a lot of traction, and which I think is quite a hopeful sign for the future.
Thank you very much, John. Chris, do we